Welcome to the Leap Health Workplace Podcast. Here we explore innovative, proven health and wellbeing solutions to drive your performance and productivity. Leap Health empowers individuals and organisations to prioritise their health and wellbeing as a catalyst to performance and productivity. We do this by providing workplace health and wellbeing performance workshops and also the Leap 360 one-to-one leadership coaching to drive health, wellbeing and performance, powered by the Game Changer Index Energy for Impact profiling tool. And we offer bespoke corporate programs to ignite proactivity in ownership at all levels of health and wellbeing as a catalyst to performance and productivity. Whether you're sat at your desk right now or on the move, get ready to listen, get ready to invest your time and take action straight after. I'm Anna Reddy. Let's get ready to make small steps to leap health. So welcome to the podcast today, and what an episode this is going to be. We have got the incredible Raheel Mirza, who was a contestant on MasterChef. So get ready to take some top tips on how you can make your food even better and always wonderful recipes. So a bit about Raheel. He was born and bred in Nottingham and now lives in Sheffield with his wife and two daughters. Nadia is his wife and Isla and Eva are his two daughters. Raheel has a bit of a love affair with appearing on TV programmes, and this is where, if my dear grandma was still here now, she would be so proud. The first of these is that he was a 5 times champion on Countdown. That is one of my fondest memories of being at my grandma and grandpa's house when I was little, was watching Countdown. So yeah, her ears will be perking up in a grave right now. And he's also made successful appearances on The Chase and The Weakest Link. But probably what he's most renowned and well known for is being a contestant on MasterChef. And he went on to launch his own cookalong and bake-along sessions from his home kitchen with his daughter Isla, appearing on BBC Radio to discuss the charity fundraising that they've both done for the NHS charity and working with local schools and charities to bring home-cooked food to everyone's home in his unique style. And we're going to explore a little bit more about the wonderful charity work that Raheel has done. With a background in learning and development, which, like myself, who was in the pharmaceutical industry for a long, long time, Raheel hopes to continue this cooking love affair to spread the joy of food and learning how to cook to as many people as possible. So, welcome to the podcast today, Raheel.
Hey, Anna, thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have you here. So, that was a bit of an introduction that I've given, but I'm sure I've probably missed lots and lots out there. So do you want to tell our listeners a little bit more about who Raheel is, please?
Yeah, of course. So I guess you've got the personal and the professional side of things, really. So you've covered off my bits of both, really. So my professional background, 20 years in pharmaceuticals, mostly learning and development. And as you mentioned, in the last sort of 3 years, I've set up my own company, which we're going to talk about a lot more. And yeah, from a personal perspective, already mentioned, wife, two daughters, live in sunny Sheffield. Not so sunny today. We thought coming into April it might have improved, but not so. But here we are, and yeah, really excited to talk to you a little bit more about the company and what we do.
Wonderful. And yes, we're recording here from not so sunny Burnley as well. So we could all do with a bit more sunshine. I know, it is. So before we get into the crux of this, I just want to let our viewers listen to this stat, which is just incredible. And then this will really keep you focused on the next part of our conversation. So in February 21, Raheel broke the Guinness Book of Records with a staggering 827 people joining his online cook-along. This smashed the previous record of 176. Wow, that is an incredible jump, isn't it? From 176 people in the record to 827. So tell us a bit more about how that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've already mentioned my appearance on MasterChef, and what people don't know is that with MasterChef, it's recorded a few months before it goes live, like a lot of TV programs, really. So my program was recorded in the December of the year prior to COVID, and then my program actually aired the day Boris announced a lockdown. So people remember that day well, I'm sure. So we were pretty much in lockdown, not long after my program had aired. And the intention was never really to set up a company or do anything in food. It was just really for my own interest. And as we went into lockdown, people were asking me, look, we've not got a lot to do. So I had a bit of a captive audience, to be fair. And they were, show us how to make a few dishes. So it just started off as a bit of fun. And then later on that year, we thought, we could turn this into a company. When I say we, I mean my daughter and I, who was only 10 at the time, who's got a real business head on her. So I thought, yeah, let's try it. And launched in May 21. But in February of that year, as you mentioned, appeared on the BBC One show. And we just thought it'd be a fun thing to do and also something to launch the business through as well. And yeah, as I say, somewhat a captive audience, but just captured the imagination of people. More people had been introduced to platforms like this, like Zoom, who maybe hadn't become aware of it before or used it before. And that was it, really. It went global. We actually had over 1,000 people signed up from about 25 different countries, and obviously we had a few people who couldn't make it in the end, but all sort of time zones. The furthest away New Zealand, who was cooking a curry at 6:30 in the morning, whilst we were doing it in the evening, and I was delighted to break the record. So yeah, it's a lot of fun and fun memories.
Wow, that is just incredible, isn't it? And I love how you say that we set up the company and it was yourself and your daughter. And I love that because I just think they can never start too young
Yeah.
thinking entrepreneurial, can they? And you've really got to nourish that mindset as well. And you've obviously done that. And then going back to kind of how you did this cook along online, you did it from the perspective of loving to cook, but actually then you've created so much community and connection at a time when it was really, really needed as
Yeah.
well. And I know you've done a lot of work for charity as well. Maybe tell us a little bit more about your reach and incredible things that you've achieved
Yeah,
in terms of
absolutely. And
supporting charities.
you make a really important point because as much as the business is a business, and it's my family income, it was started on the basis of a charitable event for the NHS COVID-19. So it was founded, I guess, on the basis of helping people. And about a year ago, I did a bit of a survey with my regulars, a kind of bit of a marketing piece, and just to understand why is it that people join, a cook along. And I was surprised because I personally thought the main reason was people you would expect want to learn how to cook, and specifically in my area of expertise, how to cook a good curry at home. But actually, the thing that came back overwhelmingly was the social impact and the community cohesion that people felt through doing such an activity, which was really nice to hear. So charity's always been a big part, as I say, right from the start. I've worked with a number of the major sort of national charities like Cancer Research UK, and also the Brain Charity, who are based out in Liverpool, and then some more local charities as well, such as Snowdrop Project here in Sheffield, and as well as Support Dog. So we've done a lot for charity. There's just a few I've mentioned there. We've done many more, and I'm sure we'll come on to it. But with all the things that are going on around the world at the moment, I'm doing a lot of fundraising as well, particularly for Palestine at this moment in time. And then I do lots of other fundraising for people who are trying to raise funds for more individual kind of causes as well. So.
Super. And I know this is probably jumping the gun a little bit in the conversation, but I am going to do it now before I forget. If anybody wants to get involved with any of the charity work that you're doing or be able to join any of these sessions, have you got anything coming up or anything that people can get involved with?
Yeah, absolutely. So as the business is growing, I'm getting involved in more and more, I guess you might say, high profile individuals, be those celebrities, influencers, whatever you want to call them, really. And so I've done, in December, I did the first one for Palestine, which was with Ben Jamal and Jeremy Corbyn, who are both, Ben Jamal's director of Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and Jeremy Corbyn is one of their ambassadors. And then a couple of months ago, I did one with Nadia Sawalha of Loose Women fame and her sister Dina, as well as Layla Rouas. And now, and Alexi Sale, actually, I forget all the names. Now, the one coming up are actually this Saturday, so it might be short notice for some people, but there's still plenty of time to get involved. I'm delighted to be joined by renowned Palestinian chef Sami Tamimi, who's done a lot of collaborative work with a number of high-profile chefs, and we're going to be cooking together, making a dish which will also be vegan option available too. And we've already got over 150 people signed up from 12 different countries. So the best way for people to get involved is go to my Instagram page, which is at Raheel Mirza Cooking, and search it out there. The link is in my bio, and you can sign up, and then you'll get an ingredients list, and yeah, be all ready for Saturday.
Super. So not only are you going to learn to cook and you're going to listen to Raheel's top tips, you'll also get a great sense of community and connection with other people as well. And
For
there's
sure.
so much evidence coming out to show the power that connection has on your health and longevity of your health as well. So it doesn't mean you've got to be in the same room as people. This is a perfect opportunity to be connecting with people without having to actually walk outside of your house. So
Mhm.
thank you for that. I'm going to take a few steps back now after we've gone forward into where can people find you. We're going to do this all the wrong way around. But just to take a lot of steps back, where did your love for cooking actually come from, and how's that developed over time?
Yeah, so brought up in a Pakistani household. So my parents were kind of first generation, came over from Pakistan in their early teens. And food's always been a big part of our life. Pakistani culture is very much around, open house policy, pretty much. People coming in and out all the time, lots of food. Never do we have like one plate of food. It's normally three or four different dishes, and you can select what you like. And yeah, that's just a real big part of Pakistani culture. So in terms of eating food, that's always been a big part of my life and thoroughly enjoyed it. But coming from, as I say, I guess you could say somewhat a traditional Pakistani household, a lot of the men don't do the cooking. I was fortunate that my father, bless him, he's passed away now, actually loved to cook. So it was a very common sight for me to see him in the kitchen as well as my mother. So I always had a bit of an interest, but never really dabbled in cooking. It was only once Nadia and I got married that we started experimenting with cooking, taking every opportunity to sort of make three-course meals for each other and having a bit of a challenge, quite competitive spirit. I'll have a budget and I'll do it this week, you do it next. And it just started from there, really. I started acquiring some cookbooks and now I've got over 300, believe it or not. And yeah, it's just more for inspiration. I couldn't ever make every recipe in every book, but I just really like to have a look at the different recipes, get that inspiration, and do cuisines from all around the world, really.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, again, you say, you've done it from such a young age, and that culture of an open house is something probably lots of different cultures can learn from as well. Because again, it's creating that connection, isn't it? Enjoyment around food as well. It is, and working in the pharmaceutical industry as well. I've seen how that culture really, really does, you know, is opens up to other people and really just always want people to enjoy food together. It's a real opportunity for connection, isn't it?
Definitely.
Um, so yes, so you already talked about how you have it in your house, and then I guess this has had a ripple effect on your children as well, and then how you've got Isla involved with the schools as well. What are your top tips around getting kids involved with cooking and getting them interested?
So I think the first thing is just let them express their creativity. Some of the things that I've kind of learned have been from Isla and her friends when we've done cookalongs with schools. And the main thing is just not to be afraid to try different combination of things, really. And I think if you can get children involved and really get them hands-on, then they're going to appreciate where the food's come from, how it's been brought together, the different techniques. With my learning and development background, I'm obviously very much aware that people learn in different ways and different styles. So, if you've got a child that's very methodical, give them the recipe and say to them, look, you let me know where I am on the recipe, what's coming next, and it'll keep them, really interested. Let them lead the proceedings. If you've got a child who's a little bit more experimental, let's say, and a bit likes a bit more flair, then let them add any veggies into a curry. Say, look, what's in the fridge? Go and have a look. Or when you're out shopping, what vegetable haven't you used before? Let's try that today. And most things go together. If I'm honest, there are some rules that a lot of chefs talk about in terms of this must pair with this, but I'm a firm believer in that unless it's way weird combination, then most things will work. So yeah, just to really get them involved and make it interesting, give them the knowledge they need, and then yeah, take it from there.
Yeah, interesting how you tackle it with different types of children as well, that methodical way or maybe the creative type. Yeah. I guess I struggle a little bit with mine. Mine are quite creative and the kitchen can look very creative at the end of it as
Yeah, yeah.
well.
And I think that the thing is, I think that's one of the things that we kind of hinder children sometimes through that. I guess, desire for having everything clean and tidy. And I'm a bit like that in that, I don't want flour on the floor if we're baking or, splashes of tomato sauce everywhere. But unfortunately, sometimes children find that fun and that's how they learn. And, good clean down afterwards, get them involved in that as well.
Yeah,
It's not a problem. But yeah, I think sometimes it's our own inhibitions that can stop children rather than their curiosity.
absolutely. We've got to let that curiosity come out in them, definitely. So in terms of all the different things, you said you've got 300 recipe books. So there must be lots and lots of recipes with all them added up together. Out of everything that you've made, what are some of your favourite recipes? I know the butter chicken's one of your favourite, isn't it? But let us know about some of your favourite recipes.
Yeah, so I guess from my cultural background and heritage, which is Pakistani, one of the things that I'm trying to actually, if I may just digress slightly from that question, is that uh, I'm trying to educate people around cuisine and that I've been guilty of saying it. We all say it. We're going out for an Indian tonight, and one of the things I'm trying to educate people about is that Pakistani foods are very different to Indian foods, very different to Bangladeshi food. There's lots of countries that form the Indian subcontinent. We wouldn't say if we were going for tapas that we're going for European tonight, right? We'd say Spanish, we'd go for Spanish food or Italian. And there are some key differences. So the main thing being the level of spice. So my family comes from the Punjab side of Pakistan, so tends to be more spicier dishes, fierier dishes as well, and also quite often a really good combination of meat and vegetables. So one of my favorite dishes to eat and to make is called dal gosht, which is basically means lamb with lentils. It sounds very basic, but cooked long and slow. I love dishes that are really rich in flavor, and that really pack a punch. So that would be one of my personal favorite dishes to eat as well as to make. But a lot of people think that that's what I make and eat all the time, but I don't actually. I love Moroccan food. I love Italian food, Chinese. So, all of those different influences, just flavor for me is really important. I love baking too, but I think for me, it's got to be something that's really flavorful, lots of veggies as well as meat. And that's you tend to wear to I love like a prawn and pea risotto, for example. I love risotto. I just love the flavors and the texture. Moroccan tagine again, really nice. So lots of different flavors. You're going to be drooling by the end of this, Anna.
I'm going to be feeling hungry.
I know, starving already.
So that was a bit of an insight. I appreciate all different areas think you have different types of food, but can you give us a few more examples? So you've given us an example of Punjabi food there.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, they're probably intrigued, like I'm intrigued, to know a little bit more about the differences of the different areas.
Yeah, for sure. So as we know, India itself is such a huge country, and then the Indian subcontinent is massive. And generally speaking, if you start from the north and go south, you're talking more spicier, fierier ingredients and foods in the north. And then as you come further, so more red chilies, more whole spices, more kind of pepper. Then as you come down south, you still have those ingredients, but you probably introduce more keynotes such as coconut milk, curry leaves, which would then soften it a little bit, and then everything in between. There's no kind of hard and fast rule in terms of north is spicy, south is milder, but generally speaking, that would be the way that you would look at it, really.
Okay, so we'd have a fowl in the north and a korma in the south.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
say, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, in simple terms, I put it in layman's terms
Yeah,
there.
yeah, too right, too right. Well, that's one of the other things as well is that, we all know that the chicken tikka masala was something that was invented here in the UK, for the Western palate, for the Brits, as it were. And, sometimes these dishes are made up, if you like, for marketing, but also for the palate of the local population. So, yeah.
Interesting. So you'd mentioned like you like things really flavoursome, with lots of like spices in. This is where some people get a bit confused, isn't it? And it can be a bit of a minefield as to what spices you put in what. How can you simplify this for us as to how we can incorporate more spices? Because obviously, yeah, I'm a nutrition coach, so I've got my nutrition head on now as well. And spices are a wonderful way to flavour things, without lots of flavorings and preservatives and things like that. So please can you make it dead simple for us as to some key spices you can include in different meals?
Absolutely. So if we talk, are we talking, if we're talking curry specifically, then absolutely I
Any
can.
any food, but yeah, we'll start
Yeah,
with
okay.
curries.
So I think for me, there is a real science behind spices. The first thing to note, and it's just having that understanding and awareness that every spice reacts differently, behaves differently when you cook it, cooks at different times, give different flavor notes. And I think that's the first things that people think if they're making a curry, if they've got like a blend and they just put it all in together, that somehow this alchemy will happen and it will taste fantastic. I'm not saying it won't taste fantastic, but if you build up the layers of spice, that's really how you get the flavors coming out. So, for example, if you're making a curry, to really simplify it, you would start with the whole spices. So when you're getting that oil heated up, before you even put any onions in the pan, you would start with things like cumin seeds or green cardamoms or black cardamoms or cinnamon or cloves. So those are kind of generally your whole spices. Then you go in with your onions, tomatoes, ginger, garlic. Then you would go into your powdered spices. So that would be your next layer of spicing. So things like your turmeric, your red chili powder, coriander powder, cumin powder. And then towards the end of cooking, you finish then with your herbs and finishing spices that you want to stay fragrant and give those top notes. So things like a nice blend of garam masala, which most households have a different blend, but you can buy it from the shop, as well as finishing herbs such as dried fenugreek leaves, which could transform any dish. But they need to be treated differently because if you put them in at the beginning, you just lose that flavor. So that's the same really against across most cuisines. If you think about it in that sense, is that all the spices will react differently, but start off with whole spices, introduce more powdered spices, then finish off with the more delicate herbs and spices, then that's the best way to do it. And one of the best books I've got is actually a book called The Science of Spice. And in there, they've actually created a periodic table, believe it or not, of all the spices, how they react, and what they pair with. So, for example, it will say, if you want to use fish, you can use it with what flavor notes go well. So you might have, if you're using a curry, you might use lemon or lemon zest. You might add it in a spice called amchur, which is like green mango powder, so it adds nice balances the citrus note, and then you might finish with some coriander leaves just to balance that out further. So it gives a really nice profile. So it's a good way of looking at it, actually.
Super. So the science of spice, I've made a note of that. My husband is obsessed with making curry, so that will be a wonderful present.
Excellent.
But yeah,
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good book, and but there's plenty others out there. But I think, as with anything, it's just experimenting, or of course, joining a cook along. I can always talk you through
yes, yeah, good plug there.
it.
Join Raheel and his cook along and learn how to build up those spices. So again, thinking about that, how we put a bit more of a nutritious element on some traditional tasty dishes. Um, have you got any recommendations on substitutes that you can use with, without really compromising on the taste too much? Because as I said, it's got to be enjoyable, but just with a bit more of a healthy slant on it.
Yeah, so it's a question I get asked again and again and again. And particularly with curries, I think there's a real misconception that curries can't be healthy. Now, don't get me wrong, it's the same across any cuisine. I mean, you only need to see chefs on Saturday Kitchen. You see the amount of butter they'll throw in with some steak or whatever. So every cuisine has its dishes that are luxurious and indulgent and has dishes that can be made a lot more healthier. And I think for me, my mantra is very much about getting a good balance. So, if I want to have a butter chicken, which is quite frankly got lots of butter, got lots of double cream, yogurt, it's not going to be the healthiest version. You can make it healthy, but for me, it's just not going to taste the same. But I'm only going to have that once in a blue moon. But of course, you can make substitutes. So, for example, that one I've just said there, butter chicken, if you're using ordinarily something like a double cream, you can replace it with a lighter creme fraiche, or you could just add more natural yogurt. So you don't have to use a double cream. You could substitute it with yogurt. The cooking techniques would vary slightly just because when you add any dairy to a pan, depending on the fat content, it can split if you add it on too high a temperature or low. So there are those considerations to be aware of. But the other thing around oil, for example, I mean, I'm sure you being the expert on nutrition more so than I, you'll know that the conversation on oils goes round and round in circles, doesn't it? So I mentioned when my parents came over, they loved using ghee, which is clarified butter. And as I was growing up through the 80s and 90s, it was like everyone needs to ditch the ghee. It's so bad for you. It's going to clog your arteries. Use oils. And now we've gone back full circle. So now the fact is that refined oils aren't better for you. And actually, the pure form of butter, there's research to suggest is better for you. So I think the research will always change. But I think if you have a measured approach, use less quantities if you want to make it healthier, then that's the way to do it, I think. But there are certainly times when you can substitute if you fancy having, I know not everyone listening to this will be eating meat, but if, for example, you do eat meat and you're using chicken or lamb, is to substitute that recipe and make it a vegetarian version, or use, jackfruit, for example. You can get tinned jackfruit, which has the same texture as chicken, so and pork. I mean, I don't cook with pork, but in terms of the texture, I've been told it's very similar. So again, you can substitute things like that, which give you the same sense of eating those foods, but are a lot healthier for you.
Super tips. And I think that's just such a good point that you make, that we do go round and round in circles with advice and claims. And this is why we've got to be really switched on, not to jump on the bandwagon with everything, haven't we? And as you said, for a long, long time, all fats were deemed as harmful and everyone was on a low fat diet. And then, American Heart Association and other big bodies realised that, no, we do actually need some fat. But probably it's more so of those healthy fats, isn't it, rather than the saturated fats. But then, like you said, they've got different smoke points, so there's benefits of different types of fats. So it is quite complex. So it's really about looking at that individual approach and what's your body telling you, what's your family history, and what could you be predisposed to. So how do we really tailor it? But you've given us some really good tips there. Thank you, as to how we can maybe put a healthier slant on things. But I think all your spices and things and lots of the ingredients in your curries are really, really nutritious, aren't they? And
they are, and I'm you talked about children earlier as well, and maybe not just getting them into cooking, but also getting them to eat different foods as well. And I think for me, it's all about flavor.
Yeah.
And when I talk about spice, I don't mean hot all the time. People associate spice with chili. Spices can be very mild. So you can spice something and it be really mild. So introducing flavors, it doesn't just have to be spices, but introducing flavors is a really good way of engaging children with eating, and adults, to try new things. Because I think if you have a good amount of flavor in food, it gives you that more sense of feeling full. I mean, you'll have a more of I guess, a scientific explanation, if you like, for that as being a nutritionist. But I do personally, from eating, I know if I eat something that's flavorsome, I feel like I've eaten something, and it keeps me fuller for longer. If it's not so flavorful, then I feel like I need to go and grab something else to make up for what I've not had. So I think the overall profile of what you're cooking, the flavors, the constituent parts of it, are really key. And I mentioned the brain charity. We did a series last year where we chose a different food stuff that was beneficial for the brain. So, for example, we chose spinach, and then we based an entire dish around that, or we chose turmeric and we based an entire dish around that, and so on and so forth. Carrots. So it was a really interesting series, actually, and we made some amazing curries, bakes, all sorts of stuff.
Wow, I bet that was great. I do workshop around food for mood, and it's interesting just what a profound effect it has on your mental health and your cognitive function, what you eat. And quick stat, although your brain's only 2% of your body weight, consumes 20% of your calories. So we often think, don't we, about what we eat, it's all about our physical image. Well, we really need to focus more on the way that we feel and our mental health as well. So great example. I'd love to see some of them recipes that you made as well.
Yeah, happy to share those. And just on that point, you mentioned about good mental health. So we know that there's no physical health without mental health. And I'm also just another on a side. I'm also a mental health first aid England practitioner. So I do lots of my cookalongs are based around well-being and nutrition and the importance of that for your body as well as your mind. And as you say, brain is part of your body. So we always think about physical health, but we don't always think about mental health. And there isn't not one without the other. So it's really important.
No, absolutely. And if you don't prioritize your mental health, then trying to achieve your physical goals is quite difficult, isn't it? Because often, in lots of sporting performance situations as well, a lot of it's in your mind, isn't it? A lot of it is that mental strength as well that that gets you through it. So yeah, we've really got to address the two together. So aside of like we've delved into health a bit there as well, but we're going to take a bit of a turn back to your experience on MasterChef. So I'm
Yeah.
sure the listeners would love to know a little bit more about like, behind the scenes in MasterChef. So go on, reveal all, wants to know. Tell us a bit more about what was it like with your journey through MasterChef?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the common questions I get asked are about, and we can't go through them all, but about the audition process, what were John and Greg like? Isn't the food cold when it gets to the top? So all of these common questions. So maybe I'll touch on a couple of those. So in terms of John and Greg, both really nice actually, even off camera. John's obviously the trained chef. Greg's the greengrocer. So Greg's the person who kind of makes you feel a little bit more at ease, a bit more jovial, joking. For those of you who've seen it, you'll know what I mean. John's a little bit more serious, but obviously he's got that cookery know-how. But you don't receive any coaching or guidance when you're on there. I think sometimes people think that when you're on there, you get someone who's going to teach you techniques or advise you. There's none of that. It's literally you're on your own. And in that kitchen, which isn't as big as it looks, there's like 30 camera crew, which obviously you don't see. Each person has their own home economics person who's buys the ingredients in, make sure you've got what you need. You've got runners who, you'll click your fingers and they'll bring you a spoon or a fork or a wooden spoon, whatever you need. So it's a real buzzing atmosphere there, which is hard to kind of just filter out when you first get in to then focus on the cooking. So that's the first thing. But then the other thing around the food being cold is in the first round, for those of you who watched it, when you go up and you present your dish, if you're the third or fourth or fifth person, then your food does end up cold by the time it gets to the top. But what John and Greg are doing is they're actually going around tasting the food in between whilst, off camera. So they've already got a good idea at that point which dishes they're going to put through. So that bit there is more for presentation. It's more for the TV, for the production side of things. And I guess if it were really close between two, then the presentation might then sometimes, push it in one person's favor. So yeah, the food in that first round quite often is cold for them. And yeah, there's so many people in that room, it's unreal. But yeah, it took me a few minutes before my hands stopped shaking so I could chop the onion. But once you get into it, it's really cool.
I bet it's quite surreal that first you first enter that room. What
Totally.
actually gave you the motivation to go on MasterChef then?
So
What
I think
told you to actually enter?
when you
Were it the
mentioned,
people that maybe told you to go for it, or
to be honest, it was more kind of my own self-motivation to go on it. And you mentioned earlier about a bit of sort of TV program history there. So I've always enjoyed the production side of things. You're there for a full day for an hour's program. So, there's lots of behind the scenes in the green room. You're meeting people, you're interviewing, changing clothes if need to. So there's lots of things that go on, which I find quite fascinating. But then also the fact, as I said earlier, I grew up eating good food, enjoyed cooking good food. So I just wanted to challenge myself really. And I guess linking it back to my professional career, I've always, I guess, talked about and also embodied this growth mindset. So for me, it's a case I want to challenge myself, see how far I can go, and yeah, just have fun whilst doing it.
brilliant? So next step then, what's going to be where we're going to see you next on TV, Raheel?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think I've had enough TV for now. There's nothing really that takes my fancy in terms of going on. So I think I'm quite content doing what I'm doing for now. And there's plenty of opportunity to do things on Instagram now, isn't there, on social media? So that gives me an audience to work with. So yeah, I probably don't need the TV platform anymore, but we'll see. Watch this space. You never know.
It might be a rest for a little bit. So in terms of your work you're doing now with Cookalong, you tell our listeners a little bit more about what you do now and how MasterChef has maybe springboarded you into an area you didn't think you'd delve into.
Yeah, so the MasterChef journey was really something that I never embarked upon with a view to getting into food. And as I say, lockdown was an opportunity for me to start a company, try something new, and it just took off. And so for me now, the Cookalong company, which is a company I set up 3 years ago, we deliver a number of different types of cooking experiences. So the main type is the corporate sort of side of things. So I do lots of team building events through the medium of cookery, be that sales teams across the country, make it competitive, or it could be a senior leadership team who want to do something different. I've done global events for up to 1,000 people. If I know that in the pharma industry, we used to be able to go away a couple of times a year. Since COVID, I know that's changed. So I know a lot of people are trying to do more digital conferences. So again, if it's an activity people want to do rather than the traditional dine around, then it's something that people do and reach out to me on. So I do loads of those. We've already talked about the charity cookalongs that I do. And again, if anyone's interested or wants to do any fundraising, they can again reach out to me through my Instagram platform. I do community stuff. So I do lots with schools, with libraries, with WI groups. So lots of that goes on. Celebration cookalong. So, if you want to do a 60th birthday party or an anniversary or just a one-to-one cooking class, then I do those. So as well as the well-being ones we talked about. So there's no limit to what it can do. And of course, with it being mostly virtual, there's no geographical barriers either. I do in person as well, but I think at the moment, well, I don't think I know. At the moment, it's shifted from pretty much 95% virtual during lockdown to and shortly after, and it's now probably a 70-30 split. So 70 still virtual, but 30% of the time in person. And then there's hybrid events as well where you can be doing a bit of both. So yeah, so really, I love it, love what I do, and people thoroughly enjoy the experience. So
Lots of opportunity there, and if anyone's thinking, oh, it can't be the same online or virtually, just remember that Guinness Book of Records, 827 people. So yeah, Raheel can engage people online as well. But yeah, I love how you say you do it in the corporate space, because this was one of my frustrations for years and years in pharma, and I was in a really, really good place in pharma where they did look after their employees, but there was always such a focus just on that learning and development and not the well-being side of things as well. And like we just said, the mental health and physical health go together. If you're not, nourishing the mental health of your employees, and they're not going to absorb that learning and development as much as they possibly could. They don't get the return investment for it. But I love how you're doing those corporate sessions as well, rather than your traditional things at a lot of meetings where they've loads of money just to throw a free bar at people and then wonder why they don't absorb all the learning that they've been given.
yeah.
It's just a different way of doing things, isn't it? And it's making those changes for the better. And I think from what I'm hearing, what you're doing is pushing things that are a little bit different, but actually it's having a positive change for the wider world.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, it ticks so many boxes. So, you've got the team building aspect, you've got the employee engagement, they're receiving something, you've got the personal growth through doing a new activity. So there's so much that forms a cook along that goes into it. There's a lot of prep that goes into it behind the scenes that obviously people don't see, like with a lot of these things. But it is something different, and people thoroughly enjoy it. And all the feedback I've had is that it's just a great experience. And I've had people come back, do duplicate sessions, numerous sessions, over and over again. So yeah, it's definitely something worth considering if you're thinking of doing something different for your team, for sure.
Yeah. So it's a dead easy way to get people to connect, isn't it? Rather than you think of the traditional way where you all sat round tables having a meal, making small talk with whoever's next to you, asking the same old questions to get to
Yeah.
know people. It's a far easier way to get an enjoyable way to
It
build up
is.
teams, isn't it? In that connection.
It is, and I think that the other part that people really like, and it doesn't always have to be like this, but quite often people will be in their homes, in their kitchens, so they feel more
Yeah.
comfortable, they feel safer making mistakes if they're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just a little bit more relaxed. They've got family, they've got pets getting involved. There's normal life happening whilst you're doing it, so people feel a bit more relaxed. And then, clients can also come to me and say, we'd like to have something more personalized. So sometimes people order like a cook along experience where they'll get a branded apron and a branded chopping board, as well as a signed copy of one of my cookbooks, and then a spice kit that goes with it. So it really can be a one-stop shop for people that maybe don't know where to get spices or ingredients. That comes to your door. So think it almost like Hello Fresh, but in a corporate team building sense. Just like that, really. So we try and make it as easy as possible for people to get involved. Because I know, again, having been in the pharmaceutical industry, quite often you'll get a handful of people will say, I can't make it, I'm not well, or whatever. But with it being virtual and people in their own homes, it makes it more accessible and less reason for people not to get involved, I guess.
Yeah. And again, there's lots and lots of benefits, but that people are in their own home, they can be more their authentic self. And this is, again, what companies are striving for, isn't it? For more authenticity, more psychological safety. And I think this is pushing towards supporting that as well. So it's wonderful. I feel like we're kind of drawing to a close now, Raheel. Is there anything you think I should have asked you by now, or anything I've missed out that you want to let our listeners know?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything. I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity and the platform to talk a little bit more about what I'm doing there. So as I say, the Cookalong Company, if you want to reach out, is at Raheel Mirza Cooking on Instagram, or you can search me up on LinkedIn. And I can share the information with you. The Cookalong Company, as I say, has been running for 3 years now, and it's in a really good place. So I may actually think about delving back into learning and development at some point within the pharma industry as well. So again, I do some consultancy work on that side as well. So if people are interested, they can also reach out to me on that side of things. But yeah, it's a, pardon the pun, but it's a real good blend of training and coaching as well as cooking. So worth giving a go.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm sure everybody's taken lots of things away from this today. And if there's lots of ideas or top tips that you've heard today, I'd recommend that you write them down now, capture them now before your life gets busy and you move on to the next thing. So thank you once again, Raheel, for your time.
Thanks, Anna.
And an amazing conversation. Thank you. So before you stop listening, I want you to pause. What did you take away from the podcast today? What small steps will you start? And what did you hear that you know could help someone else to make small steps to link their health, well-being, productivity and performance? Please do share this episode and please subscribe to the podcast. And remember that Leap Health are here to provide workplace, health, well-being and performance workshops, one-to-one coaching and bespoke corporate solutions to help the world make small steps to leap health, well-being, productivity and performance. Please do get in touch. It's Anna at leaphealth.co.uk. Have a great day.